And um, the fun part of this is that it becomes a roundtable discussion, right? Generally, Rabbi gives the Torah perspective, I give the psychological, sociological perspective, and we pick a different subject every month. But what we love is your input. So if you have any questions, if you want to, talk while we're talking, if you want to write it down and send it forward, that's what Alona's here for. You can write your questions and she will ask them. This is our beautiful moderator. Thank you for always being here. So yeah, the whole point is to have a meaningful conversation, right? So tonight's topic is building stronger relationships through better communication. And I've gone ahead and written out 10 different parts of communication that we can all tap into to make any relationship better, but specifically the relationships that are closest to us, because those are generally the ones that trigger us the most and the ones that we sometimes become comfortable or complacent with. So you want to be a little bit more aware, right? Okay, so first of all, I want to start with a thought. The quality of our lives depend deeply on the quality of our relationships. Everyone would agree with this, yes? But the quality of our relationships are directly connected to the quality of our communications. So they're going to go hand in hand. It's extremely important to have good communication if you want to have good relationships. Okay? Most people don't struggle because they don't love each other. They struggle because they don't know how to properly communicate. Okay, they don't know how to communicate what they feel, what they need, what their hurts are, right? And what they're afraid of. Many people are in pain, right? But the communication isn't only words. Communication is energy. We're speaking to them. Okay. A person can technically say the right words, but still the other person can feel unseen. So sometimes a word that's spoken can break a person, and sometimes it could heal years of trauma. So tonight I'm going to go through 10 parts of communication and how to use different tools within those parts to better our communication skills. With Rabbi's permission, shall I go up to part 1, or would you like to give a little intro?
From the Torah's perspective,
Yes.
we know that as far as creation is concerned, the Torah divides creation into 4 tiers. There's the inanimate, there's a plant life, there's the animal kingdom, and then there's the human species. However, regarding the human species, the Torah does not refer to us as generally in reference to who we are as Bnei Adam. Yeah, there's mention of that. But in the categorization of the human species, we're called Sug HaMedaber. We're called the communicators. The Torah referencing what are we here to do? We're here to communicate. And it's very interesting, and that is, we would think that animals communicate. Birds communicate amongst themselves. Why is it that the human beings are referenced as communicators? Because there's something in the communication style that is unique to humanity. Last week's parsha was parsha Emor, and we know that Emor means to talk. There's the word daber, dibur, ledaber, to speak, and then there's to talk. What's the difference? Our sages explains that talking is softer. Speaking is harsher. Speaking is reference to masculine, and more is speaking kotomar, lebet Yaakov, this is for feminine. When relaying information, when communicating, the Torah tells us that who are we? We're the one that's able to communicate. But then again, animals could communicate, bird could communicate, et cetera, et cetera. But they don't communicate, they speak. What do they speak? Instinct. They can only speak according to the creative instinct of survival, to transmit code of survival. When the coach is saying that the difficulties in marriage arise when we don't properly communicate, and we're not just talking about words, there's body language, there's tone, there's the look that we give as we're communicating, the body posture, the place, the environment, the time, etc. There's many, many different details of it. However, in communicating, we're communicating our inner selves, not our instinct to survive. Human beings are the only one, and specifically us, who are able to transcend our basic instinct of survivability to communicate something which is transcendent and greater than ourselves. When the coach was mentioning before that it's the lack of communication, well, not being seen, not being heard. There is a very, very powerful teaching that says if you're talking and you're talking to someone and they're not hearing you, it means you haven't yet talked to them. You have talked words that resonate with your survivability, with your references.
And you're talking to talk. You're
And
not talking to
if you're using the key that opens up your heart on another door in someone else, and it might have the same shape, but it's one little difference will make the difference if you could open it or remain jammed and you try to pry and pry. I'll show you something, and this is going to be my approach, and this is how I learned it. I'm going to show you something. We've done this so many times in classes, but watch this. I'm going to show you what proper communication, talking versus speaking looks like. So we have a door here, right? Here's a door. And this is a block between the husband and the wife, the parents and the children, the colleagues and everything else. Now, I want to get in. What do I do? So I press. What if it's not? Press. I'll either break my shoulder, I'll break the door, something will be break. Rather, the only thing I need to find out is where is the handle and how does it get open. Many times when we speak, we use the inner force, the feeling that I can't live like this, or something is triggering me, my pains, my anguish, my this, my back, my past, my so forth. Instead of finding which words will open up this moment in our relationship. And for this, only human beings could do, because we could communicate beyond our survivability. When you listen to most couples and all the couples that I've sat with, and certainly from my own experience, see something very, very painful. That couples could be speaking for years and years and years until they don't. But what are they saying? They're only referencing their own inner triggers, their own unhealed pain. And so what inevitably happens is that they start playing table tennis with their triggers. He says this because something's hurting inside himself. And then she gets triggered because of her unhealed inner wound. So she pushes it back to him, and they get into this infinite loop. Healthy communication, holy communication, is the ability to transcend and advance beyond the current trigger in order to help heal, in order to establish a bond, in order to create a healthier and more free-flowing connection between the couple, the parents and their children, or the colleagues, etc.
Very valid. But we don't want to just survive, right? We want to thrive. So using proper communication is the first step, in awareness, right? Awareness of what that means. So part one, pause between trigger and response. What does that mean? One of the greatest relationship skills that we can develop is our ability to pause. Okay. Most damage in a relationship happens when there's emotional flooding, right? There's anger, there's defensiveness, there's fear, there's feeling of disconnection, feeling of rejection, right? When people feel emotionally unsafe, they often move into four responses: flight, for flight,
Right.
fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Okay. So either they go into fight mode, they go into flight mode, let me run away. They go into freeze mode, they shut down, or they fawn, which is, yeah, okay, whatever you say. They don't really mean it, but they just want to shut the other person up. Any four of those, what happens is communication is starting to break down. Any of those causes a breakdown. But instead of you going into those four responses, which are all protections for the person, we want to try to understand the other person. And in order to do that, so the stimulus comes in, the person says something, the other person is triggered, pause. You take a second, you take a minute, you breathe, soften your shoulders, think, and then respond. That's the difference between reacting and responding. A reaction is the stimulus comes in, I'm feeling a certain way, boom, I'm reacting. Stimulus, reaction, right? But when you pause, you give yourself a second, you breathe, and you think, what is the best response in this situation? And when you're aware that your response will elicit either a positive outcome or a negative outcome, you are going to choose the proper response to elicit the more positive one. Because at the end of the day, who wants to live in a negative state, right? So give yourself that gift of pause in everything, with your spouses, with your children, with your parents, with everyone around you. You're feeling something, pause. Take a minute. Give yourself that gift. Ask yourself, what am I actually feeling? What does this situation remind me of? Am I reacting to this moment, or is this something from my past that's triggering me? And what response will align me to what I really want to become? It's not about this 1 second. It's about, what do you want to do next? Who do you want to be next? Every one of our responses is going to set us up for what you're going to be next, right? So the goal is not perfection. The goal is awareness. That's what we're looking for when we pause. And if you don't mind, I'll go on to number 2.
1 second. That pause has to be very deliberate. Many times, psychology offers up, and it's a very good trait to pause. Why? Because when we go into the fight or flight state, when our heart exceeds 100 beats per minute, we become, like Coach said, flooded. And at that point, our executive functioning skills take a backseat to our fight or flight, to survivability, and we no longer think. At that moment, the mind starts collecting data of how to defend and how to offend, et cetera, et cetera. So that pause is very, very valuable. Yes, yes, yes. However, that pause doesn't guarantee anything. It just may taper off that fire and make it an ember. But then you come back into the conversation and it starts again. Everybody knows that there's times that you could pause and you're okay, take a break, give me 30 minutes, an hour, whatever it is. And then you come back and the same arguments are on the table and you come back and you're even more frustrated. Why? Because there's something missing over there. Aside from the pause that gives the animal soul the time, the ego time to just relax a little bit so you could start thinking again. Beyond thinking, am I going to reach the goal that I want? Which is okay. But our sages in Pirkei Avot says, "V'havli metunin badin," that we have to be deliberate in judgment. When we offer up judgment, what's judgment? Look, seemingly the sages are referred to judges. Don't be hasty to judge. But each and every one of us are judges. Each and every one of us judge the premise, the parameter, the people, everything based on our conscious or subconscious, our traumas and everything else. Don't be deliberate in judging. The Rambam, Rabbi Yonah, and the Rebbe in talks explains something very, very powerful. And that is, in taking that pause, first you have to examine, and was already discussed in the previous class, in the previous sessions, the difference between perception and perspective. Perception is very unique to my life, to my strengths and my weaknesses, my traumas and my accomplishments, et cetera, et cetera. In other words, it's very unique to me. And while I have my perception, and we spoke about it many times, Mike and I are sitting 1 foot apart. But if Mike tells me what he is looking, what he sees when he's looking towards my direction, and I tell Mike what I see in his direction, we'll be in odds. And
That's
even
right.
though we're literally 1 foot apart. Why? Because he has his perception and I have mine. And we're looking in two different directions. So we could be fighting. No, 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 I know what I see. No, 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 I know what I see. And it's okay, fine. But there's perspective, the ability to get out of ourselves and take a topical look from above. And that requires us to really not just take that pause and ask ourselves, what result am I looking for? And are the words that I'm utilizing and so on and so forth, is it pertinent to accomplishing? There's something much more. Our sages teach us. Vahavidan is called the Chavschos. Yeah, we have to judge every single person favorably. But the Baal Shem Tov teaches, what does that mean? If you're going to judge the entirety of the person, know everything about them, their past, their present, their future, every detail. Because we don't talk to answer questions, we talk to the person. And for that reason, if we're talking to the person, if we're going to find the correct words that are going to open up, we have to understand the other person's perspective and perception. That pause isn't just about realigning myself and be able to get out of my fight or flight mode. That pause should reflect on what I said, yes. But just as importantly, to try to understand the other side's perspective. Why are they saying this? Where is it really coming from? We were learning today morning when a woman says, I work so hard in this home. So what if her husband says, okay, go to sleep. We'll get a maid. That's a solution, isn't it? But obviously he's not listening to her. That's not what she's saying. There's always the words, and then there's what's underneath the hood of those words. And what's underneath the hood of those words? I don't know if you'll appreciate it. I'm working so deliberately, so exhaustively. All I'm looking for is for you to appreciate, to lend a hand to show that you care. But if he is not listening, it doesn't take her perspective from his perception. Then yeah, he'll take that pause, but he'll come back and says, "But I told you could go to sleep already. Why are you still going with this? I don't understand." And this could go on infinite because she'll get frustrated with him, and he'll get frustrated back, and that's when they start playing matkos with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So that pause has to be deliberate. Take that time, whatever time that is, to get out of the fight or flight mechanism state, so you could start thinking holistically and judge this entirety of the situation.
They're valid. So I like to say that communication is like playing ball, right? So one person throws the ball, right? The other person has to catch it, hold it, understand it, process it, make sure they have a firm grip on it, and then throw it back, right? But sometimes people, they either throw too aggressively, They throw without clarity. They throw too fast. They refuse to catch. They drop the ball. They interrupt before fully even catching the ball, right? Healthy communication requires that both people participate, like playing catch, right? If a person is constantly just throwing their emotions, their thoughts, their concerns, their frustrations, their needs, the other person can't be emotionally present enough to catch all of that. And what happens? Then communication breaks down. When someone is speaking, imagine that they are handing you a ball. Imagine. And what's your job when they're handing you the ball? Your job is to catch it, hold it carefully, make sure that you understand what is actually being said, respond thoughtfully, and then gently return the ball. Okay? Not every ball needs to be thrown back immediately, right? Sometimes a person needs a moment to hold and make sure, got a firm grasp on it. Sometimes people react too quickly because they're emotionally overwhelmed, right? So instead of catching the ball, for example, with presence, they just throw it back. So there you go. You just boom, boom, boom. It's like throwing it against the wall, in other words. It's not doing anything. That's where arguments actually start. But strong communication starts when both people slow down enough to fully receive each other. Right? Sometimes the most healing thing that you can say, let me think about that. Okay, I hear what you're saying. I want to understand this better. I'm trying to fully catch what you mean, right? So slowing down when someone's coming at you with boom, 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 boom. If you slow down your tone, you slow down your words, you slow down what you're saying and go into curiosity. My favorite statement this year has been the word cure is the base of curiosity. You become curious about something, you will find the cure that you need in it. Okay? So slow everything down, become curious, ask questions. The other person can't help but to go along with whatever tone you're putting out. Okay, that's actually very powerful. So communication is not like tennis. My friend Alona loves tennis. It's not about how hard you hit. It's about creating a connection. Okay. It's about learning how to carefully handle what the other person is emotionally handing you. That's part number two.
There's a concept that we discuss many times in the relationship classes and the parenting classes, which is very, very pertinent to every one of us. What's the difference between arguing and fighting? What's the difference? Arguing is to determine what is right. Fighting is there to determine who is right.
Can
And
you repeat this? I'm sorry.
arguing is the act of debating and talking to determine what is right, while fighting is the act of speaking over each other to prove who is right. And what's the difference?
One has ego.
The fight comes from ego. I want to feel that I'm right.
Yeah.
At what expense? The expense that in order for me to feel that I'm right, you have to be completely wrong. And until I have not completely mashed you and bashed you and made you retreat, I don't feel right yet. I'm sorry. And I'll keep on going and I'll keep on going. Why? Because internally, I don't feel right. And so I'm just revealing in communication, we say we're revealing. So the question, which part of us is revealing? The animal soul will reveal its hollowness, its emptiness, its need for acceptance, its need for and the acceptance it didn't receive as a child, as we spoke about in the previous session. Either way, fighting requires character assassination. You have to destroy the person. You have to bring up what they did in the past, what they did in this, what their parents did, what your mother and your dad and your brother, and don't forget last time, and you'll keep on getting that. The animal so has no end to its curiosity for data to find how to like be right now.
I think the worst part is that nobody feels any better
Well,
afterwards.
that's
Even the one that's theoretically
right,
thinks they
right.
won.
No, just
Nobody feels better. Nobody
it
wins.
deflates the person both.
Right.
Now, arguing is there to discern what is right. The pivotal difference between the first and the other is that argument will never ever demean the person. When you communicate, you always communicate in a dignified way. You don't have to put the person down because you're not looking to put them down. Because how many times you could be right in a fight? So what did you gain by that? That you made your significant other feel like they are nobody and nothing? And what, for what purpose? And how does that make you feel that you chose a nobody and nothing? Or you made this person a nobody or nothing because of your need to be right? For that reason, arguing is there to determine what's right. I'll bring my understanding, you'll bring your understanding. I'll bring my perception, you'll bring your perception. I'll bring my perspective, bring yours. We'll talk about it. We'll examine it. We'll be deliberate with it. We'll dissect it and re-dissect it and perhaps have one part one time, another part. But overall, we'll be dignified towards each other. And it comes from bittul, from humility.
Humility.
Tonight, incidentally, we're in Sfirat Omer, Malchut Shebahod, which is royalty in humility. Malchut is one of the traits of Malchut is speech. And when we communicate towards our significant other, it has to come from humility. And must, in order to communicate to our loved ones. And this is how you could discern if your words are going to stick or not. Where did it come from? Did it come from a place of humility? That I know how great I am because God made me, but I know how good you are because God made you too. I have my perspective, you have yours. I've amassed my perspective from my life, from everything that God gave me, and so did you. For that reason, God put us together. So me and Mike, although he's looking this way, I'm looking that way. But when we communicate, we'll have the holistic view of everything. We'll have the entirety. This is the Indian with the ball. There are two types of ball players, of generally in reference to what the coach just said. Yeah, there's people like me who don't know how to play ball. I just don't. I don't play sports. Kickball I did, but anything else I wasn't. So there are people who generally just don't know how to throw. So when they'll throw, they'll misthrow and this and that. That's, But there are different type of people that the coach seemingly reference. They throw too far, too hard. They're why? Because they want to prove that they're good. They have a need to
the
prove.
ego.
It's the ego. So I'll throw it to you and catch it. Why? So I'll show you how strong I am, how good I am. But I'm sorry, but we're not playing the same game, obviously, then. You're throwing, I can't catch. Remember when I was in public school and we would play in Latchkey in the after school services, we would play dodgeball with the 1980s balls. You remember those? So that thing hit you and you got some big players against you. If you're going to catch that ball, you're going to have a mark on your chest for days, right? But either that or you move out of the way because what's your options? Or you could break a finger. So most of the people who are afraid, they would not even attempt to catch the ball. Well, imagine if you're talking to someone who's abrasive from the get-go, and you know that the second they're going to get triggered, it's just going to come up with abrasive, and it's going to hurt everything. What are you going to do? You're not going to want to catch it because I'm sorry, I can't right now. I just can't. That, if somebody hears those words, that should give them a sense that, wait a second, that saying in American, I ain't catching what you're throwing at me, sister. That means that I'm sorry, I'm not getting it. I don't want to take it. Why? Because I'm afraid. We cannot speak out of chas v'shalom dominance and making the other afraid of us. words, what it says, Divrei Chachamim, the words of the wise, are spoken with pleasantness, calmness. The tone matters.
Tone.
The look that we give as we're communicating matters. The body language. And we were watching something the other day, and the person was like told to say yes, but shake his head. It's like, yes, I agree with you. Yes, I'm very good at what I'm doing. Like, in other words, like, so what do you understand that the body is trained, that the mind is trained to read the entirety of the person, not just the words that are coming out.
That's right.
And reference that. So if we're finding ourselves playing in a mismatched ball game, means either the person maybe doesn't know how to communicate, and that's okay. We can learn together. It's like anything else in life. This is for our marriage. This is for our children. This is for us, or whatever it is. We need to learn. We need to learn. We need to learn how to communicate. That's all. We need to learn each other's language, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's okay to say, as we learned the other day, Hod is responsible for Hodai, to acknowledge. One of the most powerful motivators for success is to acknowledge that I failed in the past. And to acknowledge that maybe I don't know. And that motivates to grow. That's Hod. So if it's okay to say, I don't know. I didn't realize. I didn't know how to communicate. So at that point, you learn. That's one. But if it's coming from the ego, because I need to feel right, well, that's a different issue altogether. Because being right doesn't make the situation right.
So here's the thing with that, Rabbi. The interesting part is, although both sides really, in a perfect world, need to be aware and, doing their part, the interesting part of this is even if one side becomes more aware and more alert and more present when the communication is happening, they are actually able to help the other side also become more aware and alert. Unfortunately, most of us look and go, well, he's talking to me in that way, so I'm going to talk to him in this way. I like to help people see things differently. It's much less important what the other person is doing and much more important what you're doing. Look and see what you're doing that's making things better or worse. That's where the pause is. That's where you have the ability to make things better or say, you know what? I'm going to win this. And really, who's the winner? Nobody, right? Okay.
But
Yeah.
in that point, that's a very, very foundational point you just brought in. In that point, in that moment, yeah, it's sometimes one side might not be so willing and open to communicate. But that's perhaps, as we spoke about in that inner child session and so on and so forth, because they learned as a child that their communication is not valuable. They were told to shut up, or they were scorned when they said something wrong, so they learned not to communicate themselves. So their go to, as we spoke about, I believe,
To belittle.
one of our first classes. It's very interesting when the fight or flight, when somebody, God forbid, almost gets into an accident, somebody almost hits them. Chas v'shalom. Usually there's the original pause, right? And what comes out next? A bunch of anger. How dare you? What's the matter with you? You don't know how to drive. Why? Where's that coming from? Because they learned that vulnerability is painful. That second that they feel vulnerable, rage comes out, anger comes out. If potential vulnerability is required for this situation, instead of opening up and giving yourself intimacy, just open up and let's communicate. As soon as the need even arises, they lock it up with anger, with this. Why? Because it's not comfortable to feel. It's painful.
Defense.
So how do we undo that? It's very interesting. one of the best ways to do that, when the other one is clearly not a willing partner to communicate right now, is to create layers of defense for them to make them feel safe. And it's very difficult because you need to know them very well, what their safety looks
And you
like.
need to be present.
And you need to be very present in yourself, in your life.
Okay.
And not just, we spoke about not just my personal competence, like what I do. Yeah, I do this and I do this for you, and I go to work for you, and I cook and I take the kids, or whatever it is. No, the presence that you need. Because their parents didn't teach them that you are important.
Exactly.
It's what you do, and you are not important. Or they might have been yelled at and screamed at and belittled. How could you not be like your bigger sister or your younger brother or like this? And why could you? So he learned that he is not important unless he overshadows everybody. And for his success, he has to be the most dominant. Or her success, she needs to be right. Okay, that means that they're not being themselves. But that what needs to be is that the one side who is, it says we can't be both spouses cannot be strong at the same time. One's strong in one aspect, the other one's strong in this one. This one's weak over here. This other one will lend your strength. So when you see that the other side is not willing, we call it the other side because right now you're not acting as one. So you're noticing that they're at the other side. They're not willing. Okay, so you ask yourself, am I present in my marriage? Am I present with my kids? Am I present in my life?
Mm-hmm.
Do I embody me? Am I good with me? Do I do things out of guilt, out of need to prove? It could be, we could have acted so many years like this, it just becomes us. But is this a real me? Because one thing for sure, God didn't make mistakes. He didn't pair two people just who had nothing to do with each other. He chose you or she chose you because you have that presence that is going to help them open up their locked door. But for that, you need to be present. It's number one. Number two, create that safety. What do they need in order to feel relaxed? What do they need to be able to let go of their defense system so you could actually talk? That's very important. You need to know them. You need to know who they are, their stories, their narratives, their inner stories, their out of narratives, and so on and so forth. And cater to that. That will arouse them.
You know what's interesting also? I find when someone says to me, I don't feel love from my spouse. I want to feel loved by my spouse. And when I ask them, do you show him love? That's always oh, I guess not, right?
So how do you
It's
know?
incredible.
But love is also very different for each person,
It
right?
is,
Like
but
everyone
that's the
interprets
point.
it differently.
The feeling that they want to have, are they giving their spouse that feeling?
In Hebrew,
Right.
in Torah, love, ahava, is equal to 13.
Mhm.
And 13 is equals to echad, 1. Love is the act of alignment. To say, do you love the person? Do you love me? It means, are you aligned with me? Or are you nurturing me because you have a deficit and you need to nurture and you need to do this and you need to do this, and I'm just a willing participant in this in the circus of your life. Two different things.
Right.
V'ahavta l'recha kamocha. We just had it 2 weeks ago in the parsha. Love your fellow as yourself. Align with your fellow. Recha, when is he your fellow? When you're aligned with yourself. Recha kamocha. First, you need to be aligned with yourself. How many? I would ask you this question because to communicate, once again, we're not communicating survivability. We're communicating our inner self. At least that's the aim. The question is, how many times do we communicate versus how many times do we speak just survivability triggers? And the question is, and this is the hardest question, because we're at various ages here, but I've done this with so many different demographics. and I myself confronted myself with this question for several years. How, on a scale of 1 to 10, and you don't have to answer this publicly, but how aligned are you with you? How much of you do you accept? Not just what am I going to do? I am where I am. There's nothing going to change, and I might as
It
well
also
just.
goes back to the awareness, right? When you become aware that such a
Right.
thing even exists and
Right.
you start to look
Right,
at
we were
it and
talking about
say,
that after.
okay, where do I need to go? Most people aren't, we don't see it and we don't want to see it. But once it becomes a part of our being, that every day I'm asking myself, where am I at? Where am I at? And how can I just be a little bit better? That becomes a part of who you are. It's an incredible thing. You just need to start yourself and then you just go. So this actually next part leads into that. So part number 3, listening to understand instead of listening to defend, right? Most people are not truly listening. They're listening to defend instead of listening to understand. Okay. Most people are not truly listening. They're preparing their responses in their head while the other person is still talking, right? When someone feels unheard long enough, they stop communicating vulnerably, right? The communication becomes short, defensive, cold, sarcastic, emotionally distant. I mean, we've all seen relationships like that, right?
Technical, very technical,
Very technical and very like, okay,
mechanical.
whatever, just, just leave me alone kind of a thing. People open up only when they feel emotionally safe, right? And that's one of the greatest gifts we can give to another human being is to create that space for them so that they feel that emotional vulnerability. So John Gottman has a concept that he talks about turning towards instead of turning away. So John Gottman is like the foremost person in marriages, and he's done a lot of work on this. One of the most powerful concepts that a healthy relationship can have is turning towards each other. So, for example, a person can say, "Hey, look at this," right? How was your day? Simple things. I'm tired. Can I tell you something? Right? Sit with me. These are little things that you're bringing the person that is your spouse or your child or your parent or whoever you're trying to get close to. You're inviting them into your own world. Okay? These moments may seem very small, but these are all like bids for emotional attachment. This is what Gottman calls bids for attachment. The question becomes, are we turning toward each other or are we slowly turning away from each other? Okay. Healthy relationships are not built on grand gestures. This is the important thing to realize. Many people think it's the grand gestures that are going to make a relationship. Wow. It's not about the buying of the house and the car or these huge, none of that matters. If you have little bids of attention for each other and from each other, and literally someone says, come sit by me. Let's watch TV together. Let's read together. Let's have that close proximity. That little bid for connection goes a long way rather than one sits on one side of the house and the other one on the other. And, even when one spouse comes home, going to the door for a minute and welcoming them home, you know? These little things, they add up to be a huge, beautiful relationship versus after a while, not even realizing that your spouse came home and he could be home for 2 hours. You don't even know it. That happens. But it didn't happen overnight, right? That's the point. Just the same way that the connections, the small little connections built a beautiful, strong relationship, the turning away from each other will build that disconnection over time. So it has to be conscious thing, right? What some of the most powerful things that people can do for each other is to look at each other, make eye contact when you're speaking to each other, listen fully without interrupting, put the phone down when someone's speaking to you. Ugh, that's a big one. Our heads are in our phones constantly. Make it a conscious effort. Respond in a warm tone, in a warm, loving way. Stay emotionally present. These small moments repeatedly will create emotional closeness. Okay, so instead of you always, you never, what's wrong with you? Why are you like this? God forbid, why? Never use why. That introverts. We always want to ask what, how. That's the second story. You can try to say the words, help me to understand, right? So someone's saying something to you that's making you a little, help me to try to understand. Can you explain what you meant by that? Right? I want to hear your perspective. Can you elaborate a little more? Right? So you're prompting them, you're creating space for them, you're allowing them to share their point of view. I can see that this is important to you. You're very passionate about it. Okay, I may not fully agree, but I really do want to understand. Okay, curiosity creates connection, criticism creates defensiveness. The cure is in curiosity. Become curious. When you're feeling a little not so much, or you're not understanding, or the person's coming at you with something that you're like, what is going on? Instead of defensiveness, become curious. Become curious. Ask the right questions and prompt them. Slow everything down. Prompt them to be able to build that. Use it as an opportunity. Put it that way. Use it as an opportunity to bring the connection forward.
So we're right now, we all know, in the time of Sfira Somer. And it's very interesting. We're all commanded to count 7 whole weeks. And there's in Chassidut, there's a question based on the homiletic explanation as to the mitzvah of counting the Omer. Our sages gave us a parable of a pauper who was brought out by the king from the muck and bathed and cleaned and told him that in 50 days period I'm going to give you my daughter to wed you, etc., etc. Obviously, this is a reference from us coming out of Egypt and 50 days later receiving the Torah. The question is, so why are we not counting towards Shavuot? Every single day we say today is the 3rd day of the Omer and so on and so forth. From the Omer, from the time that we give the Korban, from where we started, now where we're going. One of the explanations is that if we view our trajectory from the result perspective, we might feel very daunted very quickly. In other words, as a coach just brought up, there's a grant scheme, there's a great relationship. Like that great relationship, well, look around you, see an entire structure. You know how many micro details are in this grand structure? How many different details have to go, how much consideration have to go to each particular detail? We view the entirety because we already walked into it. But in the process, many details. So too, when people usually look at relationships, and this is unfortunately tied in to media today, social media and so on and so forth, to show you the couples, everybody's happy and smiling and so on and so forth.
Disaster.
I remember when I was 14, 15 years old, coming back from school, I was just developing at that point, and Oprah was on it. You remember Channel 7 at 4 p.m. or something like that, right? You remember? And at that point, she was interviewing one of the first, at least at my age, Hollywood power couple, Tom Cruise and
Nicole Kidman.
No, yeah, Nicole Kidman,
Yeah,
right,
Nicole
right.
Kidman.
Yeah, they met on
I
Days.
actually remember that episode.
Yeah,
That's funny.
they met on Days of Thunder, whatever, whole thing. And now, he's like, Oprah turns to Nicole Kidman and says, "Do you love him?" And she says, "Yeah, of course." Why? He says, and she, without missing a beat, says, "Look at him, he's gorgeous."
Uh-huh.
And all the audience, yeah. And I was like, if only I could be gorgeous like Tom Cruise. Maybe I'll find love in my life. What happened 3 years later?
Hmm.
They're ripping each other, literally ripping each other, Court. But
I
what
think
happened?
they still hate each other
And they
after
still
30
do.
years.
And what happened? What? They weren't powerful. They weren't good looking. What happened? The issue is
Nonsense.
when we are impressed by externality and we don't see the details. What does the Torah have to say? Hegaiti umasasi tami. A person, the aim, and this is something very powerful. The product, I'm sorry, the process is the product. The process is a product. The results and the product themselves, that's up unto God.
That's
But
not Hashem.
what
Our
God,
job is only the
that
process.
God gives us a process. And for us, the process is the product. What is a process? Well, if we're going to look at what a grand marriage looks like and then think to ourselves, well, that's not us.
Mhm.
Immediately, it's like, you see, it's not point. What's the point?
So either you're perfect or you're not.
Exactly. And therefore, then you're going to shut down.
Neither one
But
exists.
this is what the coach is telling us, is that ask yourself, and we spoke about it in the relationship class, there's a great study how many times the strength of a couple is determined by how many times do they thank each other in the course of 48 hours.
Mm.
It's a great study for this. 2 to 4 times you're in a good place. Below 2 times you're in a very dangerous place. Above 4 times you're in an excellent place.
I love that.
Why? Well, how does one
Just thanking.
just thank
Right?
you?
That's all it looks like.
In 48 hours, 2 days. Why? Why is this correlated? Is it correlated or is it causative? Obviously, it's correlated, but what's the issue? Oh, there's also hodaya. Hodaya, to thank, to have gratitude. One of the hardest times to have gratitude, one of the people have a very difficult time to say grateful word. Thank you so much. Thank you. You're so good. Why? Because as soon as I say thank you, how much more so if you're in the middle of an argument? Oh, I can't. If we're in the middle of an awkward time, no, I'm not going to say anything. No. Why? Because at that point, if I say thank you, I show that you did something good. And now I'm indebted to you. Now, here's the issue. What's the real insidious issue with this? Is that in 48 hours, you couldn't see what the other person did. 48 hours is nothing they did. It means that the marriage is an autopilot.
And your ego's too big.
And the ego, it's like, no,
Please. So what if you say thank you?
Of course you're going to pick up the kid. Of course you did that. Of course, it's a given.
It's bare minimum.
It's right. No, that's exactly it.
They need to go watch Barney. Please and thank you. They're the magic words.
But the thank you that we
They
say,
didn't learn.
the thank you is to acknowledge. Lohodot is to acknowledge that you matter. So here's how it looks. Communications, the small details. Do you wake up
Your sister Ellen.
and go to sleep? Good morning, good night. We spoke about in one of the previous sessions, the strength of a marriage. Very good relationship, but how much more so marriage? It's not in the good times. It's what happens in between the good times.
Absolutely.
That, when we speak about making a safe space for the other, to know that you're not going to throw them away, that you're not going to turn your back if they act out, if the inner child comes out, as we spoke about. When does the inner child come out? When they actually feel safe with you. When they feel that it's okay for that inner child that went hid in the closet years ago or underneath a mattress, now they feel comfortable to come out because they realize that you can help. And then it's going to come out like a kid who wants to sleep with a tantrum and woke up with a tantrum. And you're going to say, whoa, I didn't sign up for that. Well, they're actually testing. And the first thing the child is gauging is, are you going to throw me away now that you've seen the dark side of me? The painful side of me, the incongruent side of me. Now, how do we show it? To say, no, yeah, of course I'm not going to throw you. That's one thing. How do you look at each other at that moment? Do you say good morning? Do you say good night? Do you still get each other the water or the food or the vitamins or
Down to
this?
acknowledgement.
In other
right?
words,
You're
are you still,
acknowledging.
how do you text throughout the day to each other?
Mm.
How do you what?
Text
There has to be communication throughout the day.
throughout the day.
Throughout the day, an emoji, something. Today we have ChatGPT. Just make sure the long dashes are gone.
Wait, hold on.
What? Is ChatGPT your spouse?
No, in other words, you have to understand there are people who find it difficult to communicate. So at least we have the tools.
At least
It's
it's something.
We have something. However, just to be able to communicate it, just to be able to communicate throughout the day. What about the most important that you show to them that you care? And this is
Sure.
so important.
For sure.
If they communicated to you that they had a very important meeting
Meeting,
or to go to the doctors or they're going through something, when you know that they're out, as I told you at 2 p.m. I'm leaving. I have it until 2 o'clock. 2:05, since text, how was it?
That's right.
How you going? What are you
That's right.
feeling? Ask him throughout the day, how you feeling? I was speaking to someone the other day, and they were sitting with their spouse, and they like I asked the spouse, you say, how do you feel to your spouse? And the other one says, nobody ever asks me how I feel.
Wow.
Only usually how I feel
Yeah.
is asked when I'm
You're sick.
when I'm sick or I
Right.
was in pain. It's very interesting. And we had a post last week about 2 weeks ago. There's a difference between how you're doing and how you're feeling.
Mm.
Where doing is more masculine because men do, women feel. How are you feeling? How are you feeling?
So we're back to what we were saying before. All of communication leads to connection.
Right.
If you look at communication, the end goal of it being connection, right? You're going to communicate in a way that's going to bring that about.
And that's a perfect lens. There's a question, and this is how you know if you're fighting or are you going to get into an argument or get into a fight. And
May I change your word a little?
Which
Do you
word?
mind? Instead of argument, use discussion.
It could be an argument. It could be an argument.
Yeah.
That's okay. It's
I don't
healthy.
know. I feel like
Ar-
it's negative.
It might be because it says the school of Shammai, the school of Hillel.
But that's normal.
They
Arguing is,
We can discuss.
the Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel.
Mm,
One was Gvura, one was Chesed.
mm.
It says that when they would sit in the study halls, the students of the school of Shammai, Gvura versus Chesed, it would be like they're sparring like with swords, literally. Be like this and this. But when they get up, they got up as the biggest lovers, the best friends,
Right.
connected. Arguing is okay because you're not there to put the other person down. You're not there
Oh, it's
to
how you argue, for
exactly.
sure.
Sorry,
Oh, you
here's
never
the
hit
lens.
below the belt.
Here's the lens. The lens, we have to see the entirety from beginning to the end. And if at any given point we lose sight of that lens, at any given point, you have to ask yourself, what's my aim over here now? As the coach just said, the aim of any discussion is connection. Are the words that I'm going to use right now, the tone, the look, the body language, the space, there as Mrs. Gasinsky taught me based on what it says in Matan Torah is coming up, the mountain was full of smoke. Kulo Ashan. Ashan is 3 letters, Ein Shin Nun. Why do we need to know that when the Torah was given, the mountain was full of smoke? Who cares? It's instruction. Ein Shin Nun stands for the 3 parameters that must be aligned in order for purpose to occur. Ein is olam, space. Shin is shana, time. And nun is nefesh, the individual. Space, time, and individual, which is interacting in these 3. In order for purpose to occur, it has to be the right space, the right time, and the right person. Sometimes it's the right person, but it's just not the time or the space. You're going to hit them in a place where they're going to be very defensive right now. Not only not going to be listening, they're going to defend. And you know what's going to happen afterwards? They'll get ready to be served back.
ready to rumble.
Get ready to right? Why? Sometimes it's the right person and the right space, just not the time. And we're not talking about what time is it right now. It's time to get ill. We're not talking about that. We're talking about, are they in the right time of their life right now? Are they in the right space in their life to listen to this? Are they ready to receive what I have to say? And if maybe might not be able to receive the entirety, so let me give them, like doctor, holistic medicine, unlike conventional medicine, has to be aligned with the person themselves. What's your capacity right now? Where they're holding in life. You might be saying the right words, but you might be throwing them off with these right words. So for that reason, the lens that we have to be looking at it every single time is what I'm about to say. My body language, my tone, my demeanor. Is it going to propagate and promote connection? And at any given moment, we lose sight of that.
Very valid.
Stop the conversation because you're not conversing anymore.
Pause.
You're not, no, this is a hard stop. You lost the focus. You could tell yourself, and it's, it's very empowering to actually say this in the course of a conversation. Even if you find yourself going between the line of arguing or debating or fighting, the strongest thing, the way you could short circuit it immediately, says, look, I feel like I'm losing sight of
I'm not in the right state right now.
of talking right now, because right now I'm feeling that I'm being overheated and I'm about to say things that are definitely going to bamboozle our connection. And not because I'm going to mean it, but you're going to a place where my mind is no longer in charge. My emotions are now, and not only my godly emotions, my animal emotions.
And this is pure power.
Right.
A person that is able to take themselves out of that enormous emotion that they're feeling, that they're about to explode, and say out loud, I need to pause this. I need to stop wherever we're at right now. Let's pick it up in an hour or in a day, or even, you know what? I don't even know what just happened. How about we rewind and we start where we were 15 minutes ago. Can we do that? That's actually a repair. That's one of John Gottman's repairs.
It's also
You can
it's
do
also
that.
vulnerability.
Exactly.
Vulnerability
ability-
and feeling.
Exactly. A person that is able to show their vulnerability in a state where they're about to explode, that's pure power, by the way. You're putting your ego aside and bringing forth your vulnerability. That is power. People think that vulnerability is weakness, but it's not. It's actually power. So, yes, Bita, go ahead.
Can I ask a question? How, you guys mentioned earlier that you have to take yourself out of yourself to see the other person. How do you do that when you're like really angry? How
Well,
can you get out of your way to see what that person?
first and foremost, understand that the premise of a relationship, let's just say a marriage, is that you're two halves of the same whole. They're communicating their side, you're communicating your side. The aim is to be able to have a constant influx between the both of you that eventually will create a oneness, establish that oneness. In order to be able to get out, there's a saying: you don't teach a soldier to handle a gun during battle. You don't start strategizing in the midst of an argument or fight, like, okay, let me not start thinking, because you're not thinking enough. If you cross that line into fighting, you're no longer thinking. You're not qualified. I'm sorry. We learned one of the last sessions, certainly in our relationship classes. The studies indicate that anger is tantamount to being drunk. Literally, it's equivalent to driving. And there's judges who are drunk. When they were studied, judges who are angry, who were not deliberate in judgment, who deliberated out of anger, painted broader strokes, missed fine details, and certainly didn't see the people. They didn't understand. If a person is angry at a certain given moment, you're not qualified right now to discuss anything. You know what the Gemara says? The Gemara says that in the Torah says, Rizal brought this down and so on and so forth, that someone's angry is like they are worshiping idols. Would you allow an idol worshiper to communicate to your children while they're literally idol worshiping? Come,
That's
I want to
right.
teach you.
Anger is tantamount to idol worship.
So if you're now, imagine you're in an angry state, like in the middle of idol worship, would you now want to tell your children what to do? What are you communicating? Or to your husband or to your wife or whatever it is. If you're angry, you're not qualified to understand. Just like if you're really inebriated, you're not able to drive. You can't drive. You got to say no. I can't. You got to go. You have to. And this is so important that this is this intimate space that is created in the home. Shalom Bayit doesn't mean peace in the home. Peace is
peace in this home.
No, it doesn't mean peace at all. And peace is you like Coach said before, the husband or the wife could come home 2 hours, nobody's fighting, he's there, she's there, and they're like, Ronnie Dangerfield, a comedian from the 80s and 90s, early 90s, says, my wife and I, we have separate vacations, we have separate friends, separate outings, separate bedrooms, we have separate
We have the best relationship.
We do everything in order to maintain marital peace. Marital peace is exactly that. You're living in two different worlds. You're not fighting. That's great. It's quiet. That's not shalom bayit. Shalom means harmony, harmonizing, like a work of art, like a symphony. You have different pieces and but they all complement each other.
Sure.
So if a person is getting you to that point where we get angry, then you're not harmonizing anymore. You're just playing. Imagine, if you had children who was in band practice and they're playing at the same time, this one is playing is this, and the other one is playing is this, and they're like, "Wait, I can't deal. This is balagan." Right? This is insane.
Remember,
Why? Because each one is like, you're playing loud, I need to play louder. It was like, wait, there's too much noise here. And that's what's happening. So, and especially when we know, and we learned this several sessions ago, that when somebody becomes very loud, it means that intrinsically they're not feeling that they're being heard. And so if the other one starts to chaz v'shalom raise their voice, means that they were taught that they can't be heard unless they scream. If you're in a party or something like that, the music is blaring, and you want to talk to each other, you have to really be loud. Understand the people who scream have all this loudness in their head of things that they went through and things that are bothering them, and they're actually they're screaming over themselves, and that's what we don't get. That they're screaming over their own inner noise. So you don't do this while you're in the middle of this. Let me strategize. A soldier learns how to handle a gun in a very safe environment, very quiet, away from everything. You strategize when everything's good. You
bring awareness. When you're aware of it and you're thinking about it, just the fact that you're asking this question is now going to work in your mind, right? Your subconscious, your conscious mind. The next time something happens, you have a file cabinet almost to pull from, right? Because now you're more aware that there is something more than becoming reactive. And the person, as Rabbi said, is coming in loudly. That doesn't mean you have to become louder. You have options. You have choices. This actually leads us to number 4 and 5, which are interconnected, right? Do I want to be right or do I want to be happy, right? So this is an amazing question to always go to and ask yourself. When something happens, do I want to be right or do I want to be happy? Because at the end of the day, sometimes it's not even worth going that route. Do I really need to be right? You need to, yeah. That's the problem. When you feel like you have to be right, then guess what? You're just going to keep pushing for more.
Pause. You have to ask yourself a very important question. Why do I need to be right? Why do I need to be right over the need to make my marriage feel right?
you know.
That
Oh,
needs
sorry.
that needs to be really addressed holistically. And that's a strategy that we do in quiet times. This is what we sit and reflect perhaps before we go to sleep or when we're jogging or
For
when
sure.
we're working. You start thinking, what's really motivating me? Where is it
For
coming
sure,
from?
where it's not coming from. When you ask yourself, again, you're bringing awareness. You know, growing up, my father told me the story several times, and I'll share it with you. So there was a husband and wife, and they were sitting in their whatever, they had a happy marriage. And a mouse ran across the room. And the husband says to the wife, "Did you just see the mouse? It came from that hole and it went into this hole." And the wife says, "Yeah, I saw it, but it went from that hole and it went into this hole." He said, "No, it went from there to there." She says, "No, it went from there to there." And they argue and they fight and they fight and they fight and they fight and they wind up getting divorced. After a few months, they're like, what did we just do? So they get back together again and they get remarried and they go home. And the first night they're back home, the husband says, "You know, that was really stupid that we fought about that and got divorced. But you know, the mouse did go from there to there." Okay. So sometimes you gotta ask yourself, do I want to be right or do I want to be happy? Does it make a damn difference at the end of the day?
There's something you brought up an excellent point. In Hasidus, there's a teaching, and this is so powerful because it aligns exactly with what the coach was saying. What's the difference between a cat and the balabasa of the home as pertaining to the mouse? Both run after the mouse, but the balabasa doesn't want that mouse to be there. The cat wants it to be a mouse so you could chase them nonstop. There's a question. Offer most people the most simplest solution. And I'm talking about most of the solution in getting a holistic relationship is it's fairly simple. It's like the coach said, just turn them towards each other. That's all it is. Just turn them towards each other. But what I think it's Einstein that says is be wary of pessimists that have a dilemma for every single solution. Right? You offer person that has this chaos and always complains, says, "Oh, okay, you know what? Here's what we need to do." Will they take it? No. Why? Because the biggest fear is to be without that mouse, that proverbial mouse of them. Because then what? That's all I know for life. That's all I have. Now, they might not be aware of that on the conscious level, but that's how they were taught for life. That unless it's chaos, and that usually comes from a lack of intrinsic self-worth. It was Dr. Avram Tversky when he writes in one of his books that when he took over 2 floors of a very prominent psychiatric establishment, his morning is blended to night to morning. There was 6-7 days a week. It was like nonstop. Finally, this is going back into the 80s, took a vacation, a much needed vacation to go to Utah to a health spa. The first step of the health spa is to get into a mineral bath and sit in the mineral bath for 30 minutes. Oh, this is the day before internet, before cell phones. He's untrackable now. This is what he was looking for. He gets into this bath, sits there for a minute, 2 minutes, he writes. He gets back up and dresses up. "Okay, I'm ready. What's next?" He says, "Sir, you need 30 minutes. Your body needs to absorb it." So reluctantly, he gets back in. He sits there for another 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. He says, "Okay, I can't, I'm done, I'm done." And he gets up and leaves. Later on, he self-analyzed. He says, why is it that after all this noise of life, I can't simply relax? I can't simply sit in a bathtub for my benefit. And what he came out with was so deep. And this is true to the animal soul, not to the God soul. I came to realize I wasn't comfortable being by myself.
Wow.
I came to realize
I think that's very valid for a lot of
that
people.
noise I need to bring that noise. If I don't have that noise, I'm not comfortable. I don't have that intrinsic self-worth. So being quiet with quiet, you see a lot of times people have good lives, seemingly people who actually love them, who care for them. And what do? They bring drama. Why do they bring drama? Because I don't know how to love me enough to allow this reality to become mine. And for this reason, I'm going to fight you tooth and nail, no matter what.
Right.
And that's the dilemma. So now, understanding that, we have to create that space, that holistic space. And you speak about this when things are good. You don't wait until the fighting begin. I have this, which is very famous joke. And this is self-fulfilling prophecy. A guy comes home at night. He screams to his wife as soon as he walks in, "Quick, give me a beer. It's going to begin soon." So she gives him the beer. He starts drinking, sits on the couch, turning the television, drops down one beer, and he says, "Another beer, quick, it's going to start very soon." And she's like, she gives him another beer, and he goes it up, and he's scrolling through the channels. "One more, come on, fast, it's going to start any second now." And she brings him a beer, and he gulps it down, and he says, "It's starting now, give me one there." And she starts screaming, "Is this what you're going to do? You come back home very late, and you already sit on the couch, and you drink yourself away." And when she says, "Oh, see, it started already." In other words,
What came first, the chicken or the egg,
what does that
right?
mean? That we anticipate this, that we already are pre-programmed for this. This is the animal soul, the creature of habit that's already used to this. That's all it knows. So give it a way out. No, I don't want a way out. I'll find a reason, even though it makes absolutely no sense. I'll find a reason why to implicate us or you or this is for what purpose? Because I'm not good with me. If I'm not good with me, if I have to come out, I don't have the line. I can't be aligned with you. Something must be wrong with you. Something must be wrong with me. Something must be wrong with us. Well, that's where the issue is. So for that, we need to create that space. We need to create that space where we could talk and we could even vent, but in the confines of respect and dignity, with the lens of, are we connecting through this right now? Is this going to connect us? And be honest with yourself. Just like in work, just like in anything, you have to be honest with yourself. You can't say, "No, you know what?" Because at that moment when your brain could come and says, "You know what? I don't care if it's going to connect us. I feel wrong right now." You've crossed
It's
something.
what you do that
You're
matters.
you're
Again,
crossing a
it's
line
what
now.
you
That's
do
it.
that matters. But going to that, creating that space, right? The best way to create that space is by the tone that you use. All right. The nervous system responds to tone first and then words. It's how something is said. So look, if someone says, "I need to talk to you," right? One person can hear it lovingly. The other person can feel it as a threat, right? Same words, it's how it's being said. Tone can create space to bring connection, and it could tear things apart. It's the energy that it brings with it. The facial expressions that a person brings when they have that tone. People actually may forget what you said, but they'll never forget how they felt during a conversation. One of the biggest predictors of whether a conversation will go well is how the conversation begins. Okay? So you always want to start soft. A harsh beginning usually creates defensiveness, whereas soft beginning creates openness. So if we want to create that space, if we want to create that safety, that's in our hands. We have that ability. Even if the other person is coming in hard, again, goes down to what we do that matters. You slow everything down. You bring in the softness. So instead of, "You never listen, you always do this," right? What's wrong with you? Again, can we talk? I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. I would appreciate your help. It's softness. You can ask for everything. You can ask for whatever it is that you need to make your life go better. It's how you ask it. It's the tone that you use. It's the words, the facial expressions, the vulnerability that comes along with it. A sharp startup invites a soft startup invites connection, right? A sharp one invites protection. So if you're going to go in sharp, it's going to make the other person protect themselves. It's not going to get them want to give you anything back, right? So before a difficult conversation, you want to ask yourself some questions. Is my tone soft? Is my body tense? Am I speaking to connect or am I speaking to control? Right? Would I want someone else speaking to me this way? Ask yourself these questions prior to even starting a conversation, especially if it's a heavy conversation and you're feeling like I need to get this out. How you say it paramounts. And there's usually a problem under a problem, right? Most arguments are not about the surface of what's happening. It's not the surface issue. So the dishes not being done are usually, the argument about the dishes is not usually about the dishes, right?
Underlying.
Everything, there's an underlying, right? So underneath most conflict is something deeper. Usually the person is feeling unseen, unimportant, unappreciated, rejected. So they come at the other person in a different way because they're feeling all this negativity in their body, right? Healthy communication, again, goes back to curiosity. So if someone's coming at you with whatever, they're feeling unappreciated, they're feeling unheard and unseen, get curious about it. Instead of reacting to the behavior, ask yourself, wait a minute, what might this person actually be feeling underneath this? Is this really about me or is it about them? Let me look at it for a minute instead of taking it personally, right? That question alone, asking what might this person actually be feeling underneath this, helps everything just pause inside of you to be able to see the other person even, right? And very important, assumptions destroy communications. And you know what happens when you assume, right? You make an ass out of you and me. Assumptions destroy communication. Many relationships suffer because people assume instead of asking for clarity. Assumptions create stories, right? And stories create resentment, and resentment creates distance. We believe the stories that we tell ourselves. So you got to cut out all of the assumptions. So assuming that, okay, so a husband or a wife says something, assuming that, oh, he must not care about me, or she's ignoring me on purpose, or he should already know what I need, right? If she loved me, she would automatically understand, right? But healthy communication requires clarity. And in order to have clarity, you need to be open and you need to ask questions and you cannot assume. People are not mind readers, right? They're not mentalists. They might be mentally ill, but they're not mentalists. I'm waiting. I'm waiting.
Um, um, Coach brought something that there's a tell, and this is connecting to our previous session. When someone tells you, you never do
Mm.
this, you always do this.
Excuse me.
Who's talking? Who's speaking there? It's your inner child. Children use hyperboles
Mm.
because they don't know how to gauge position. They can't be exact. For them, it's always or never. So when you hear them say you never or you always, well, you're not talking to the adult self. And that moment, their inner child has been triggered, is coming out now. How do you deal with a child when they're throwing a tantrum? The worst thing you could do is just ignore them
Absolutely.
because they're
You
going
have
to
to
get
give 'em
louder
attention.
and louder. The worst, and I think reprimand them back. What's the matter with you? You're embarrassing me. You're doing this and that. You need to do when a child starts. And even he screams, I hate you, mommy, I hate you, daddy. What are they really saying? I need love. I need to feel safe right now. I need to feel connected. In conscious discipline, they tell us that there's the child, and it's inner child has three phases, three lights: red, green, and yellow. Red, yellow, and green. Red, yellow, and green. There's one, or a blue. They call it blue. There's a receptive stage where you talk. A person is a good place. They're listening. They're open. Their body's open. Everything's just open. Then there's a yellow. Like they're hesitating. They're feeling something's not right. So they're like there's a red, full on tantrum. Between the red and the yellow, anything you're going to say, they're not processing. It doesn't matter what you're saying, how correct you are. They're not listening. They're not in a place to listen. They could hear, but they cannot listen. Hearing is you hear the general noise of rain and everything else, but you're not focusing on it. Listening is to listen for the details. When a person is in that state of seething, internal seething, they're not listening. They could hear you, but it's just words are coming out, just infuriating them. What do you need to? You need to bring them back to the state of green. Now, there are certain ways to do it with the children, but one of the coach said before, when you say to someone, "I need to talk," they might get nervous. The question is why? If you have constant communication between you communicate throughout the day, and you
They
create
feel safe, they're not gonna get
you create a culture of communication in your home, so that we need to talk isn't the four-letter T word that you shouldn't be saying because it's going to scare you. We're going to talk, but we always talk. We talk
What's
on
the four-letter T word?
TAL.
Oh.
I'm like, I know I'm not good at spelling, but
I know, I was starting to count to like T-A.
Okay, that works. That works.
but so one of the ways that I find is if you come from a place of leverage, yes, there should be an assumption. And the assumption is we're good. We're good. The person I'm talking to, my spouse, my wife, or my husband, is ultimately a good person. I married them after all. They might be going through
Fascinating, by the way, how many people I talk to that they see their spouse as almost the enemy. And when I remind them, you married this person, you chose to marry this person. It's almost like a novel idea. It's fascinating. You
Right.
can't lose sight,
But you see, in that moment, if you come from leverage, that first of all, I'm talking about my other half. They're good. They might be going through a rough time. I might be going through a rough time. But
Mhm.
first and foremost, I need to know that we're good. And if we're good, then we're going to speak up to each other. Because the aim is to become closer. Right now, we might
That's
have
right.
incongruencies. So what do we have to do? So number one, the body language. If permissible at that time, whatever it is, I often suggest to couples, if you have to have a difficult conversation, as hard as it is in that moment, sit with each other, hold each other's hand, pet, just like literally just calm the person, show them that they're not in trouble. Just show them, because the inner child, if they were threatened as a child, if they were screamed at for doing this or that, then as soon as the tone, women, I spoke about this last time, but you should know the look scares men. I kid you not. The look scares men. You women know how to give a look that terrifies us.
That's so
And
funny.
because it reminds us of the look that we received when we were children. The disapproving look. You're not good enough. And that could blow the person up, like immediately just shut down. And then they're not thinking anymore. They're just in defense mode. So first of all, make sure that you're in a fun-loving look.
That's hard.
It definitely is.
That's my go-to.
What?
I know
Oh,
it is.
you know the saying.
I don't yell, I just give a look.
This is hard. And fighting is hard. Choose your heart.
Yes,
Choose your
obviously,
heart.
for sure.
But understand that if the aim is connection, then you don't want to speak or do anything
The
that
goal
will-
has to be very clear. Absolutely.
Right.
The goal has to be very clear.
So for that reason, you sit in the right time, in the right place. Make sure that if it's men, they ate already. Make sure that they're like sort of they're coming because they're coming from a world that's seething outside, and they need something. They need that time, and it's not without you, by the way. Maybe they do. It's like Coach said. It's so important that spouses come and greet each other at the door
100%.
because as we spoke about in our class, John Gottman, one of the first symptom that it indicates the God forbid the destruction of the wedding, the marriage, is one word: value. The second the spouse doesn't feel valuable in your own relationship, if they're spoken down to, if they're not cared for, if they're constantly put on defense, whatever it is. So I'm not valuable even here. Outside of the world, people need me for what I do, and I have to fight this, I have to fight traffic in this and a fire. But no one home. Don't we want to feel valuable?
Absolutely.
And that's the question. Before you start attacking, did you already make them feel valuable? I mean, to the point that they know that? Or you just come, let's go.
I told this story before. I'll tell it again. When I was first getting married, my mom sat me down. It was a few things that she really wanted to make sure that I understood. One was, there's going to come a time when you're busy with kids, you're busy with life, and your husband's out at work and he's seeing whatever he's seeing. When he's coming home, you got to make sure you get up, fix yourself up, you brush your hair before he comes home. You go to the door, you open the door, and you welcome him home.
Yeah.
That's number one. The second thing, going back to what Rabbi was saying, she said, if you ever have something you want to say to your husband, you never call him at work. Let's say for argument's sake, your mother-in-law said something that you didn't like. You don't call him at work and say, you know what your mother did? Mm-mm.
You certainly don't go to his place of work.
Oh, God forbid. You make
Knock on the door and says, hold on, this meeting is done. I need to tell you something right now.
Imagine that. You
Sure,
make a
I'm
beautiful
sure people
meal.
have done
Oh, of course they have. Yeah.
I'm sure.
Unfortunately, yes.
Sure.
You make a beautiful meal. You wait for him to come home. You let him have his dinner. You let him decompress. After he's sitting and he's in a good state of mind, which is what Rabbi was saying, how you say things and when you say things. Then you say to him, honey, this happened today and it really bothered me. I don't know if there's something you can do about it, but I kind of need to talk about it and get it off my chest. Is there something we can do about it? No matter what it's about, right? You have to make sure you create an environment that's conducive to him even hearing you, So that's valuable.
Ilana Lea always says that the couple has to see the dilemma that they're dealing with as they are dealing with the dilemma. It's both of them versus the dilemma.
Absolutely.
Not chas v'shalom them versus each other. Be the second the other one became the dilemma. Stop. You're not looking at it
Well, Rabbi,
correctly.
if they're not playing the same game, the game becomes to get you.
Right.
You always have to make sure you're playing the same game with your spouse, or else the game becomes to get you.
They're on the same team.
For sure.
No, you're not the same team.
Uh-huh.
You're one in the same. Team means afterwards you go home, I go home. We won the game together, we lost the game together, but you go back to your life, I go back to my life. Here, you're not a team. There is a team aspect of marriage, but you're one. So as we spoke
You
about
have to have
that,
the same goal. You might get to the goal. That's it.
there's no well, there is, but I'll give you a second. Continue, just
Okay, so John Gottman, going back to John Gottman, he has 4 communication habits that damage relationships. He talks about that, he calls it the 4 horsemen. Okay, one is criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. Criticism attacks the person instead of addressing the issue. So you're upset with the person, you pig, what's wrong with you? Why are you blah, 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 blah. Why? Because he didn't put his plate into the sink, right? Address the issue, not the person. Contempt creates superiority, disrespect, sarcasm, humiliation, right? So even a look, that kind of response to anything having to do with your spouse needs to be X'd out. Defensiveness blocks accountability and keeps people stuck. So you're defensive, right? So husband is talking to you or the wife is saying something and suddenly the person feels attacked. They go on the defense. Not everything is about you. Listen to see what's actually being said and respond to that. And stonewalling is basically emotional shutdown. It's kind of like, okay, whatever you say, it just doesn't, whatever. You're not even listening anymore. It's very sad. But these four are habits that many people get into that completely damage relationships. This is when a person emotionally disconnects, when they feel overwhelmed, they feel flooded, they're exhausted and unsafe. But here's the good news. Awareness, being aware of these things, right, helps us to become aware of our own patterns and our go-tos when something is happening. Being aware that, feeling criticism or contempt or being defensive or stonewalling, shutting down is present will help you realize if it's happening to say, oh, wait a minute. This is not okay. This is not what I should be feeling. I need to get curious about it and I need to help myself become better. So become curious, humility, accountability, emotional presence, and very, very, very important, repair. Repair in any relationship is the most important factor that will determine the success in any relationship. Okay, conflict is never a problem. Arguing is never the problem. Every relationship is going to have discussions. If you didn't have discussions, then you wouldn't be in a relationship. You would be two people living two separate lives, right? When you have an argument, how you repair is very, very important. Okay, a healthy relationships repair very quickly. Okay, a repair can sound simple. I'm sorry. I understand your point. I didn't mean to hurt you. Let's try this conversation. Even in the middle of the argument, if you say, you know what? Pause. Let's backtrack. I don't know what just came over me. An alien took over. Can we start again? Right? That's all. Those are all repair tactics. And sometimes when even after the argument where you're both seething, if one person, one side even tries to repair, the other side needs to do their part as well. Okay? And to always remember that friendship is the foundation of every relationship. So that being said, communication, healthy communication requires work. Okay? At the end of the day, we all need to be more present, more aware of the things that will bring, not only will bring good communication, but also the things that damage our existing communications, and work every day on rebuilding and building our relationships and our communication to be as strong as it possibly can be. Every conversation is an opportunity. Okay.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. It was lovely, lovely to see you again.
Oh, it's quieted down a little bit. It quieted down a bit. The rain quieted down a little bit.
Right.
Yeah,
I hear the difference between a few minutes ago and now.
yeah. I think it keeps coming and stopping.
Well, in a half an hour, it's supposed to stop, period.
Okay, perfect. So we'll have a half an hour.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not like for a long time.
So
Are you
every
parked in the back or the
opportunity to
front?
build trust,
Where did you
to
park?
build connection, to build a better life. Every communication is an opportunity.
Yeah, it's open. Nice to see you. Always nice to see you.
I remember seeing.
Come see us more often. Yeah, yeah, she was at my house too.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. Do you remember she came
did.
for?
I do. I do.
Thank you so much. I gave someone my word that would call before 10:30. I'm gonna try to.
Do
keep
what
my
you need to
word.
do. Thank you for
No
joining
worries.
us on Zoom.
Be careful driving. Be safe.
Do you
Take your
know-
time.
Do you know how to stop this?
Thank you.
My
Thanks,
pleasure.
Liz. Thank you.
You, Rabbi Kravitsky,
Okay.